My neighbor intercepted me at my front door and whispered, "Do you know who comes into your house every Thursday?" I laughed. Thursday? Who would come into my home? Please listen until the end, click on the subscribe button, and tell me in the comment where you're listening from. I need to know if this reaches someone. But then I installed a hidden camera. And what I saw didn't just shatter my marriage. It revealed a conspiracy so calculated, so intimate, it turned me into someone my husband never expected, and someone my daughter-in-law should have feared. I still remember the quality of light that morning, thin and grey, filtering through the hallway windows like it couldn't quite commit to the day. I was heading out to run errands, purse slung over my shoulder, keys already in hand, when Mrs. Cathy appeared. She had a way of materializing, always at the exact wrong moment. Elegant in that sharp, intimidating way, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, her posture rigid, her eyes too observant. The kind of woman who noticed when you wore the same sweater twice in 1 week. "Isabella," she said, her voice low and smooth, "may I have a word?" I stopped, one hand already on the stair railing. "Of course, Mrs. Cathy. Is everything all right?" She stepped closer, close enough that I could smell her floral perfume, something expensive and old-fashioned. Her expression was carefully neutral, but her eyes were sharp as glass. "I don't mean to pry," she began, which is exactly what people say when they're about to pry. "But I feel I should ask, do you know who comes to your house every Thursday afternoon?" The question hung between us like smoke. For a moment I thought I'd misheard her. Then I laughed, a short, confused sound. "What? What do you mean?" "Every Thursday," she repeated, enunciating each word. "While you're out, I've seen someone entering your apartment. I assumed you'd given them a key, but—" She trailed off, letting the silence finish her sentence. My fingers tightened around my keys. "No. No one has a key except Lucas and me. Are you sure you have the right apartment?" She smiled, but it wasn't kind. It was knowing. "I'm quite sure, dear. 3rd floor, Unit 3C. Your door." Maybe it was my son, Matteo, or... "It wasn't your son." Her tone was final. "I know what your son looks like." The hallway suddenly felt smaller, colder. "Well," she continued, adjusting her purse strap, "I thought you should know. One can never be too careful these days." Then she turned and disappeared down the stairs, leaving me standing there, frozen. All day, her words circled my mind like vultures. Every Thursday, someone entering. While you're gone, I tried to focus on work, on groceries, on the mundane rhythm of my routine, but the question kept rising to the surface, pulling me under. I told myself it was nothing. A mistake. Mrs. Cathy was known for exaggerating, for turning small things into scandals. But when I came home that evening, I stood in the doorway for a long time before stepping inside. The apartment looked exactly as I'd left it. The throw pillows on the couch arranged just so. The dish towel folded neatly by the sink. Everything in its place. Too much in its place. I moved through each room slowly, opening drawers, checking closets, running my hands along surfaces. Nothing was missing, nothing was disturbed, and yet the air felt different, like someone had breathed here, like the space itself remembered another presence. That night at dinner I told Lucas. He was scrolling through his phone, fork hovering absently over his plate. He murmured, not looking up. "Mrs. Cathy said something strange today." I kept my voice light, casual. "She asked if I knew who comes to the apartment on Thursdays." Now he looked up. His expression was blank, unreadable. "What are you talking about?" "She said she's seen someone entering while I'm gone." Lucas set down his phone with a soft thud. "Isabella." His voice had that edge to it, the one that meant he was about to be condescending. "You're actually listening to that woman? She's bored. She makes things up for entertainment." She seemed pretty certain. She's always certain. That's her specialty. He reached across the table, squeezed my hand briefly, then let go. "Don't let her get in your head. You'll drive yourself crazy." His words were meant to be comforting, but something about the way he said them, too quick, too dismissive, made my skin prickle. "Maybe you're right," I said softly, but I wasn't convinced. By the weekend, curiosity had become an obsession. I found myself searching online late at night, reading reviews of hidden cameras, comparing features, prices, angles. Lucas was asleep beside me, his breathing deep and even, while I scrolled through pages of tiny black devices designed to catch the truth. Finally, I ordered one. Small, discreet, motion-activated. When it arrived, I held it in my palm like a secret. I told myself I was being ridiculous, paranoid, but I set it up anyway, tucking it behind a decorative bowl near the entryway, angled perfectly toward the front door. "Just for peace of mind," I whispered to the empty room. Thursday came like a held breath. I went through the motions at work, answering emails, making calls, nodding through conversations, but my mind was somewhere else entirely. My phone sat on my desk, screen dark, taunting me. By the time I got home, my pulse was a drumbeat in my ears. I poured myself a glass of water with shaking hands, sat on the couch, and opened the camera app. My throat went dry. I pressed play. The front door opened. Slowly, confidently. A figure stepped inside, and for a moment, the light from the hallway obscured her face. Then she moved forward, and the world tilted. It was Teresa, my daughter-in-law, Matteo's wife. Her dark hair pulled back, her movements calm and measured. She didn't look around nervously. She didn't hesitate. She walked through my home like she owned it. I watched, paralyzed, as she moved toward the bedroom. She opened my nightstand drawer, placed a small envelope inside, then took out a bottle, perfume, and sprayed it once into the air. She smiled, not a guilty smile, a satisfied one. Then she left. The video ended. But I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The sound of my own heartbeat filled the silence. Why would Teresa come here? What was in that envelope? And why Thursdays? I wanted to call Matteo, to confront her, to scream, but something stopped me. A cold, instinctive understanding that this was bigger than one visit, more deliberate than I could yet comprehend. Instead, I replayed the video. Once, twice, 10 times. Her expression wasn't panicked. It was practiced, routine. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the floorboards, every hum of the refrigerator felt like an intrusion. Lucas slept soundly beside me, his phone glowing faintly on the nightstand, and I stared at the ceiling, thoughts spiraling. What if he knows? What if they're both in on this? By morning, I had almost convinced myself there was a rational explanation. Maybe she was leaving something for Matteo. Maybe she thought she was helping. But when I opened the nightstand drawer, my heart stopped. The envelope was gone. Completely gone. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my hands. The room felt heavier. The walls closer. Someone had come back after Teresa left. Someone who knew exactly where to look. When I passed Mrs. Cathy in the lobby later that day, she smiled, bright, almost cheerful. "Good afternoon, Isabella," she said warmly. "Everything all right?" "Yes," I managed, forcing my face into something resembling calm. "Everything's fine." She tilted her head slightly, her eyes scanning my face like she could read the truth beneath my skin. "Good," she said softly. "I'm glad you're paying attention." The elevator doors closed behind her, and I stood alone in the lobby, my reflection staring back at me from the polished brass. I felt it then. The first real stab of fear. Not fear of what I'd seen, fear of what I hadn't yet discovered. The next morning, the apartment felt different. The light through the windows was pale and distant, like even the sun was keeping its distance. I sat at the kitchen table, coffee untouched, staring at nothing. The video still looped in my mind. Teresa's calm face, the envelope, the perfume, the vanishing evidence. Lucas emerged from the bedroom, humming softly, already dressed for work. He looked at me and smiled. The same smile he'd given me for 20 years. "You're up early," he said. "Couldn't sleep." You worry too much, Isa. You always have. He kissed the top of my head and grabbed his keys. The moment the door shut behind him, I exhaled, long and shaky, like I'd been holding my breath since Thursday. I looked around the apartment, my home, my sanctuary, and I realized I didn't recognize it anymore. I went to work that Thursday with my heart lodged somewhere in my throat. Every movement felt mechanical. Smile at the receptionist, swipe my badge, sit at my desk, open my computer, pretend everything was normal. But my phone sat beside my keyboard like a live grenade. I'd enabled notifications for the camera app. Every motion alert would ping directly to my screen. I told myself I was being proactive, responsible, but my hands were clammy, and I kept glancing at the phone every few seconds, waiting for it to light up. The morning crawled by. Emails, a meeting I barely heard, coffee I didn't drink. My coworker, Janet, asked if I was feeling all right, and I laughed, too bright, too sharp, and said I was just tired. Then, at 1:19 p.m., my phone buzzed. My stomach dropped. I stared at the notification, frozen. Around me, the office continued its hum of keyboards and muted conversations, but I felt like I'd been pulled underwater. I didn't open the app. Not yet. Not here. Instead, I finished the rest of my shift in a fog, counting down the minutes until I could leave. By the time I got home, my pulse was a drumbeat in my ears. I locked the door behind me, kicked off my shoes, and sat on the couch. The apartment was silent, too silent, the kind of quiet that pressed against your chest. I pulled out my phone, opened the camera app, and navigated to the timeline. There it was. My finger hovered over the play button. Part of me wanted to stop, to delete the app, to pretend Mrs. Cathy had been wrong, that this was all some paranoid spiral I could still climb out of. But I pressed play. The footage was sharp, too sharp, high-definition clarity that left no room for doubt. The front door opened. Someone stepped inside, slowly, confidently, like they had every right to be there. The figure moved into the light and my breath caught. It was a Teresa, my son's wife, Matteo's wife. Her dark hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail. She wore jeans and a cream sweater, casual, relaxed. She glanced around briefly, not nervously, but like someone checking if a room was tidy, and then walked deeper into the apartment. I couldn't move, couldn't blink. She stopped at the bookshelf, ran her fingers along the spines like she was browsing a library. Then she turned and headed toward the bedroom. The camera angle didn't follow her all the way, but I could hear it, the soft creak of the bedroom door, the faint sound of a drawer sliding open. A few moments later, she reappeared. She was holding something small, a bottle, perfume. She sprayed it once into the air, slow and deliberate, like she was marking territory. Then she smiled, not a nervous smile, not guilty, satisfied. She walked back to the door, paused to glance around one last time, and left. The video ended. I sat there, phone trembling in my hands, the screen fading to black. My mind was screaming, but no sound came out. Teresa, what was she doing? Fury surged through me first, hot and blinding. Then confusion, then something colder, sharper, terror. I stood abruptly, nearly knocking over the coffee table, and rushed to the bedroom. I yanked open the nightstand drawer, my hands shaking so badly I almost couldn't grip the handle. Empty. No envelope. No note. Nothing. I stared into the empty space, my breathing shallow and fast. She had placed something there. I'd seen it. But now it was gone. Which meant someone else had been here, someone had come after Teresa and removed it. I sank onto the bed, the realization settling over me like ice water. This wasn't random. This wasn't a mistake. This was coordinated. I pulled out my phone again and replayed the video. Watched Teresa walk through my home like it belonged to her. Watched her smile. "Why you, Teresa?" I whispered into the empty room. She was family, Matteo's wife. We'd shared holidays, birthdays, dinners. She'd sat at my table, laughed at my jokes, and now she was... What? invading my home, planting evidence, playing some sick game. I replayed the video again and again. Each time her expression looked more deliberate, more calculated. This wasn't impulse. This was ritual. Hours passed. The apartment grew dark. I didn't turn on the lights. Lucas would be home soon, and I couldn't let him see me like this, wild-eyed, frantic, unraveling. I had to stay calm. I had to think, because if Teresa had a key, who gave it to her? And if someone came back to remove the envelope, who else knew? I couldn't confront her, not yet. Not until I understood how deep this went. So I sat in the darkness, replaying the footage one more time, Teresa's face frozen on my screen. "Why you, Teresa?" I whispered again, but the apartment gave me no answers, only silence, and the cold, creeping certainty that I was no longer safe in my own home. I studied the footage until my eyes burned. Frame by frame, second by second, Teresa's entrance at 1 hour, 17 minutes and 3 seconds. Her pause at the bookshelf at 1 hour, 17 minutes and 41 seconds. The exact moment she disappeared into the bedroom, 1 hour, 18 minutes and 9 seconds. Her emergence with the perfume bottle, 1 hour, 19 minutes and 22 seconds. I memorized every detail. The way she tilted her head, the casual confidence in her stride, the smile that curved her lips just before she left. This wasn't spontaneous. This was practiced. I'd never been close to Teresa, not really. When Matteo first brought her home 3 years ago, I'd welcomed her warmly. She was polite, well-mannered, always knew the right thing to say. But there was a distance between us, something I couldn't quite name. Not hostility, just absence. She never called just to talk, never asked my advice. At family dinners, she'd smile and nod, but her eyes were always somewhere else. Watching, measuring. I used to think she was shy. Now I replayed those gatherings in my mind, and different images surfaced. Teresa standing too close to Lucas at Matteo's birthday dinner, her hand resting on his shoulder, just a beat too long. Teresa laughing at something Lucas said during Christmas, leaning in like they shared a private joke. Teresa offering to help Lucas in the kitchen while I set the table, their voices low and familiar through the doorway. At the time, I'd thought nothing of it. They were family. Of course they'd be friendly. But now those moments felt different, staged, deliberate, like I'd been watching a play and missed the subtext entirely. I started noticing things, small things, things I would have dismissed before. A drawer in the kitchen that I knew I'd closed was now slightly ajar. The throw pillow on the couch repositioned, the corner no longer aligned with the seam of the cushion. My jewelry box moved 3 inches to the left on the dresser. Each discovery made my skin crawl. I'd stand in the middle of a room, trying to remember if I'd touched that object, moved that chair, opened that cabinet. Was I losing my mind? Or was someone making sure I questioned myself? I ordered a second camera, this one smaller, designed to look like a USB charger. I tucked it behind a row of books on the bedroom shelf, angled toward the nightstand. If Teresa or anyone else came back, I'd have proof from another angle. At night, when Lucas was asleep, I researched gaslighting techniques, psychological manipulation, obsessive relationship patterns, unauthorized entry laws. The articles I found were chilling. People who deliberately rearranged objects to make their targets doubt reality. Patterns of control disguised as concern. Silent invasions designed to destabilize. I took screenshots, saved links, started a folder on my phone labeled Home Security. Lucas noticed my distraction. "You've been quiet lately," he said one evening, his tone somewhere between curiosity and accusation. "Just tired," I murmured, still thinking about what that busybody neighbor said. I looked up from my phone. "Mrs. Cathy." "Who else?" He shook his head, almost amused. "Isabella, you can't let paranoid old women get under your skin." "I'm not paranoid." "I didn't say you were. I said she is." He reached over, squeezed my knee briefly. "You're fine. We're fine. Stop inventing problems." The word inventing stuck in my throat like a blade. I said nothing, just nodded, smiled, but I didn't believe him. That weekend, I walked into the bedroom and stopped mid-step. The air smelled wrong. Not unpleasant, just foreign. I breathed in slowly, trying to place it. Floral, sweet, expensive. Then it hit me. Teresa's perfume. The same scent from the video. The same bottle she'd sprayed into the air. I checked the camera footage from the past few days. Nothing. No entries, no alerts, which meant the scent had been here for days, lingering, fading slowly, like a ghost. I pulled out old photo albums that night, flipping through years of family pictures. There, Matteo's wedding. Teresa in her white dress, radiant and smiling. And beside her, in almost every shot, Lucas. His hand on her waist during the father-son dance Matteo had insisted he join. His arm around her shoulders in the group photo. I turned the page. Last year's Thanksgiving. Teresa and Lucas standing by the window, heads bent close, mid-conversation. I was in the background, blurred and out of focus, another page, another gathering. The same pattern. Teresa, Lucas. Always near each other. Always comfortable. And me, always just outside the frame. I closed the album slowly, my hand steady despite the tremor in my chest. Lucas came home late that Thursday. Work, he said, kissing my forehead absently. You know how it is. I know, I said softly. He didn't notice the flatness in my voice, didn't see the way I watched him move through the apartment, checking his phone, loosening his tie, pouring a drink. He didn't notice me at all. Later, after he'd fallen asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with a pen and a calendar. I flipped back through the weeks, marking every Thursday with a small red X. 4 Thursdays ago, 3, 2, last week, a pattern, unmistakable. I stared at the calendar for a long time, then wrote a single word in the margin, small and deliberate. Then I closed the calendar and sat in the darkness, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of Lucas's breathing. I wasn't confused anymore. I wasn't afraid. I was calculating, and I would wait as long as it took to understand the full shape of this betrayal, because when I finally moved, I'd make sure I only had to do it once. Thursday morning, I called in sick. My voice on the phone was perfectly calibrated, hoarse enough to sound believable, apologetic enough to seem genuine. My supervisor told me to rest, to feel better soon. I hung up and stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. I looked the same face, same eyes, but something behind them had shifted, hardened. Lucas had already left for work, humming as he tied his tie, oblivious, or pretending to be. I moved quickly. The second camera was already installed behind the books, but I adjusted the angle, tested the feed twice to make sure it captured the entire bedroom. Then I checked the first camera near the entryway. Both were recording. Both had full batteries. Everything was ready. At 11:30, I grabbed my purse and keys and left the apartment. But I didn't go far. I drove 2 blocks away and parked across the street, angled so I had a clear view of the building entrance. I slumped low in the driver's seat, my phone open to the camera app, heart hammering against my ribs. The minutes dragged. 12:15, 12:30, 12:45. I started to wonder if I'd been wrong, if today would be different, if Teresa had somehow sensed the trap. Then, at 1:11 p.m., she appeared. I saw her before the camera did. She walked up the front steps casually, her bag slung over one shoulder, sunglasses perched on her head. She looked like any other resident, like she belonged. She pulled out a key, my key, and unlocked the door. My breath caught. I watched her disappear inside, and for a moment I couldn't move, couldn't think. The anger that surged through me was so hot, so visceral. I thought I might be sick. She had a key. Lucas had given her a key. I forced myself to wait, to watch the camera feed as Teresa moved through my apartment with that same eerie confidence. This time, she went straight to the bedroom. No hesitation, no looking around. She knew exactly what she was doing. 14 minutes later, She emerged from the building, checked her phone, and walked away down the street. I waited until she turned the corner. Then I bolted from the car. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock the door. Inside, the apartment was silent, untouched. Except I knew it wasn't. I went straight to the bedroom, to the nightstand drawer, and yanked it open. There it was, a small cream-colored envelope, identical to the one from last week. I pulled it out with trembling fingers and opened it. Inside was a photograph, Lucas and Teresa. It was old, maybe 2 years ago, judging by Lucas's shorter haircut and Teresa's lighter hair color. They were standing together at some family gathering I barely remembered, but it wasn't the setting that made my stomach drop. It was the way they were standing, too close, his arm around her waist, her hand resting on his chest, both of them smiling at the camera like they were the couple. I flipped the photo over. Written in neat, deliberate handwriting, "Some Thursdays never change." The words blurred as my eyes filled with tears. Not sadness, rage. This wasn't random. This wasn't impulsive. This was a message, designed specifically for me. She wanted me to find this, wanted me to know, wanted me to unravel. I stood there, gripping the photograph, my breathing shallow and sharp. Then something inside me clicked. No, I wouldn't unravel. I wouldn't give her that satisfaction. I pulled out my phone and photographed everything. The envelope, the photo, the handwriting. I took shots from multiple angles, made sure the lighting was clear, that every detail was captured. Then I slid the photo back into the envelope, placed it exactly where I'd found it, and closed the drawer with the same precision Teresa had used. If she wanted to play games, I'd play too, but I'd play smarter. I checked the camera footage from both angles, downloaded the files, backed them up to the cloud. Then I walked through the apartment one more time, making sure everything was in place. The pillows she'd adjusted, the book she'd touched, the faint disturbance of air that still carried her perfume. I left it all exactly as she'd arranged it. Let her think I hadn't noticed. Let her think she was winning. I drove back around the block, parked in a different spot, and waited another 30 minutes. At 2:47 p.m., I saw him, Lucas. He walked up to the building, glanced around briefly, not nervously, just casually, and let himself inside. My husband, coming home in the middle of the workday, to an apartment he thought was empty. I watched the camera feed. He went straight to the bedroom, opened the drawer, removed the envelope. He stood there for a moment, looking at the photo, his expression unreadable. Then he tucked it into his jacket pocket and left. The entire visit took less than 3 minutes. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, my knuckles white. So that was how it worked. Teresa planted, Lucas removed, a system, a routine, a conspiracy hidden inside my own life. I replayed Lucas's face in my mind, the way he'd looked at that photograph. Not surprised, not guilty, familiar. I didn't go home for another hour. When I finally walked through the door, I moved slowly, deliberately. I made tea, I sat on the couch, I opened a book and pretended to read. When Lucas came home that evening, I greeted him with a smile. "Feeling better?" he asked. "Much," I said. "Just needed rest." He kissed my forehead, and I let him, because he didn't know. He didn't know I'd seen everything. He didn't know I had proof. He didn't know I was no longer the confused, frightened wife he thought I was. That night, after Lucas fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with the photograph I'd taken on my phone. I zoomed in on the handwriting, on their faces, on the date stamp from the original photo. "Some Thursdays never change," I whispered into the darkness, my voice steady and cold. "So this is personal." And for the first time since this nightmare began, I smiled. Lucas started acting strange on Friday, not distant, the opposite. He asked how I was feeling, made coffee without being asked, touched my shoulder when he passed me in the kitchen. Small gestures that might have seemed thoughtful if they didn't feel so calculated. "You sure you're okay?" he asked over breakfast, his eyes searching my face. "I'm fine," I said, keeping my voice light. "Why?" You've just been quiet, I smiled. I told you. I wasn't feeling well. I'm better now. He studied me for a moment longer, then nodded and went back to his toast, but I felt his attention on me for the rest of the weekend. Watching, measuring, he was suspicious. Good. Let him wonder. Sunday evening, Lucas took a shower. I waited until I heard the water running, steady and loud, before moving to his laptop on the dining table. He'd left it open, careless, or maybe he thought I'd never look. My hands were steady as I tilted the screen toward me. His email was already open. Inbox full of work correspondence, newsletters, spam, nothing unusual. I clicked on drafts, 3 messages. 2 were work-related. The third had no subject line. I clicked it. The message was short, unsent, dated from 2 weeks ago. T, we need to slow down. She's noticing the Thursdays. Be more careful. We'll call you later. L. I read it 3 times. The words didn't change. T, Teresa. She's noticing. Me, the Thursdays. There it was. Confirmation. Not speculation. Not paranoia. Proof. An affair. A conspiracy. My husband and my daughter-in-law coordinating their invasion of my life, my home, my sanity. I expected to feel something. Rage, heartbreak, betrayal so sharp it would cut me open. But instead, I felt cold, calm, clear. I pulled out my phone and photographed the email. 3 angles, close-up on the text, wide shot showing the draft folder, another showing Lucas's email address at the top. Then I checked the browser history, cleared my access, made sure there was no trace I'd been here. I closed the laptop, positioned it exactly as I'd found it, and walked back to the couch. The water was still running. I sat down, picked up my book, and didn't move. When Lucas emerged from the bathroom, towel around his waist, hair damp, he smiled at me. "What are you reading?" I held up the cover. "Just a mystery." "Any good?" "Getting better," I said. "The twist is starting to reveal itself." He nodded absently and disappeared into the bedroom. I didn't follow him. That night I couldn't sleep. Not because I was upset, because I was working. I created a new folder on my phone, password protected, titled Evidence. Inside, I organized everything. Video 1. Teresa's first entry, timestamped 1:17 p.m., 2 Thursdays ago. Video 2, Teresa's second entry, timestamped 1:11 p.m., last Thursday. Video 3. Lucas removing the envelope, timestamped 2:47 p.m., same day. Photo. 1. The envelope and photograph with the message, "Some Thursdays never change." Photo. 2. 4. The unsent email draft. I added a document with timestamps, dates, and notes. Thursday, November 7th. First camera alert. Teresa enters. Plants envelope. Perfume spray. Thursday, November 14th. Second entry. Photo planted. Lucas removes evidence 1.5 hours later. Sunday, November 17th. Email draft discovered. Proof of coordination. I backed everything up to the cloud. Then I backed it up again to a separate account Lucas didn't know existed. This wasn't just evidence anymore. This was my insurance. On Monday, I called a locksmith. "I need my locks changed," I said. "Today, if possible." The locksmith arrived at 2 in the afternoon while Lucas was at work. He replaced the deadbolt and the handle lock, handed me 3 new keys, and left. I kept one, hid one in my car, put the third in my purse. I didn't give Lucas a new key. When Lucas came home that evening, he paused at the door. I watched from the couch as he inserted his key, turned it, and frowned when it didn't catch. He tried again. Nothing. "Isabella," he called, knocking. "The lock's not working." I got up slowly, walked to the door, and opened it. "Oh," I said, feigning surprise. "I had them changed this morning. The old one was sticking." "You changed the locks?" His voice was carefully neutral. "Just maintenance. Here." I handed him a key from the counter. "This one's yours." He took it, studying my face. "You could have told me." "I didn't think it was a big deal." I smiled. "Is it?" "No," he said after a beat. "No, of course not." but his jaw was tight. He knew something had shifted. He just didn't know how much. That night, Lucas was quiet. He ate dinner without speaking, scrolled through his phone, went to bed early. I stayed up, sitting at the kitchen table with my phone, reviewing my files one more time. Every video, every photo, every timestamp. The evidence was ironclad. But I wasn't ready to use it yet. I needed to know everything first. Every lie, every visit, every secret meeting. I needed them to believe they'd won. And then I'd show them what winning actually looked like. I closed the folder and set my phone down. In the silence of the apartment, I whispered to myself, my voice steady and cold. You thought I'd break. I looked toward the bedroom, where Lucas was sleeping soundly, oblivious to the storm I was building around him. You thought I'd cry and scream and fall apart. I stood, walked to the window, and stared out at the city lights stretching into the darkness. You thought wrong. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something close to power. Not revenge, control. The invitation came 3 days later. A text from Teresa, cheerful and casual. Hi, Isabella. Would love to have you and Lucas over for dinner this Saturday. Nothing fancy, just family. Miss seeing you. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, we'd love to. What time? Her response was immediate. 7 p.m. Perfect. See you then. I set my phone down and smiled. She had no idea what was coming. Saturday arrived cold and grey. Lucas was tense all day, moving through the apartment like a man walking on ice. He kept glancing at me, asking if I was sure I wanted to go. Of course, I said. Why wouldn't I? You've just been distant lately. I've been fine, Lucas. Stop worrying. But he didn't stop. He watched me while I got dressed, while I fixed my hair, while I slipped the small tablet into my purse, the one containing all my evidence, ready to be displayed. You look nice, he said finally, his voice uncertain. Thank you, I replied, meeting his eyes in the mirror. He looked away first. Teresa's apartment was warm and smelled like roasted chicken and rosemary. She greeted us at the door, radiant in a soft blue sweater, her smile wide and welcoming. Isabella, Lucas, come in, come in. She kissed my cheek, her perfume, that perfume, wrapping around me like a noose. Matteo's in the kitchen, dinner's almost ready. Matteo appeared, drying his hands on a towel, looking tired but genuinely happy to see us. Mum, Dad, good to see you. I hugged my son, held him a moment longer than usual. He had no idea. Poor Matteo. He was about to learn what his wife really was. Dinner started normally, small talk, safe topics, Matteo's new project at work, Lucas's upcoming business trip, Teresa's latest book club pick. I smiled, nodded, played along. Teresa was overly gracious, refilling my wine glass, asking about my health, complimenting my earrings. She was performing, and she was good at it. Lucas barely ate. His fork scraped against his plate, his jaw tight. He kept glancing between Teresa and me, sensing something wrong, but unable to pinpoint it. This is lovely, Teresa, I said, my voice pleasant. You're such a thoughtful hostess. Oh, it's nothing, she said, waving her hand. I love having family over. Family, I repeated softly. Yes, that's what makes this so special. A beat of silence. Matteo looked up. Everything okay, Mum? Perfect, sweetheart. I took a sip of wine. I was just thinking about Thursdays. Lucas's fork clattered against his plate. Teresa's smile froze. Thursdays? Matteo asked, confused. Yes, I said, setting down my glass. You know how certain days take on meaning, patterns you start to notice? Mum, what are you... Isabella, Lucas interrupted, his voice sharp. Can we not do this now? Do what? I asked innocently. I'm just making conversation. Teresa laughed, light, forced. I think someone's had too much wine. I've had half a glass, I said, my eyes locked on hers. I'm perfectly clear-headed. In fact, I've never been more clear. I reached into my purse and pulled out the tablet. Matteo's brow furrowed. Mom, what's going on? I need to show you something, I said calmly. All of you. I placed the tablet on the table, facing them, and pressed play on the first video. The footage was unmistakable. The front door opening, Teresa stepping inside my apartment with confident, familiar movements. Matteo leaned forward, squinting. Is that Teresa, at your place? Yes, I said. 2 weeks ago, Thursday afternoon, while I was at work. What? Why were you? Matteo turned to his wife, confused. Teresa's face had gone pale. I was dropping something off for Lucas. Were you? I swiped to the next video. Because here you are again. Last Thursday, same time. And you're not dropping anything off, Teresa. You're planting things. The second video played. Teresa placing the envelope in my drawer, spraying perfume. Jesus, Matteo whispered. Stop, Teresa said, her voice cracking. Stop this. I'm not finished. I swiped again. Here's Lucas, coming home an hour later, removing what you left. Lucas appeared on screen, opening the drawer, pocketing the envelope. Matteo's face had gone white. Dad, what the hell is this? Lucas opened his mouth, closed it. It's not what it looks like. Really? I swiped to the photograph. Then what is this? The image filled the screen. Lucas and Teresa, too close, too familiar. The message on the back visible. Some Thursdays never change. Oh my God, Matteo breathed. And this? I pulled up the email screenshot, read it aloud, my voice steady and cold. T, we need to slow down. She's noticing the Thursdays. The room exploded. You've been... Matteo stood abruptly, his chair scraping back. You've been having an affair? With my wife? No. Lucas stood too, hands raised. Matteo, it's not. We weren't. Then what were you doing? Matteo shouted. Explain those videos. Explain that email. Teresa was crying now, mascara streaking. It wasn't supposed to happen. We didn't mean... You didn't mean to gaslight my mother? To sneak into her home, to... Matteo turned to me, his voice breaking. Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know. I know, sweetheart, I said quietly. Lucas tried to approach me. Isabella, please, it's not. It was a mistake, stress. I wasn't thinking clearly. A mistake? My voice cut through his stammering like glass. This was systematic, Lucas, coordinated. You gave her a key to our home. You helped her manipulate me. You tried to make me think I was losing my mind. I didn't. Yes, you did. I stood slowly, gathering my tablet, my purse. For weeks you dismissed me, belittled me, made me doubt myself while you and Teresa played your sick game. Teresa sobbed into her hands. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You're sorry you got caught, I said coldly. Matteo was pacing, shaking his head. I can't believe this. Lucas reached for me again. Isabella, we can work through this. I stepped back. No, Lucas, we can't. Please. I'm done. The silence that followed was deafening. I looked at each of them, Matteo, devastated. Teresa, ruined. Lucas, desperate and pathetic. Then I picked up my coat and walked toward the door. Isabella, Lucas started. I turned back one last time, my voice calm and final. I'm done lying for both of you. Then I walked out, closing the door on the chaos behind me. Monday morning, I sat across from attorney Maria Reyes in her downtown office. She was sharp, mid-40s, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that didn't miss anything. She came highly recommended. 3 colleagues had mentioned her name when I'd quietly asked about divorce lawyers. I placed a folder on her desk, thick, organized, tabbed. Everything's in here, I said. Videos, timestamps, photographs, email evidence, financial records. Maria opened the folder and began reading. Her expression remained neutral, professional, but I saw her eyebrows rise slightly as she flipped through the pages. You've been thorough, she said finally. I had to be. She looked up at me. Mrs. Moretti, what you've documented here goes beyond infidelity. Unauthorized entry, possible stalking, coordinated harassment, psychological abuse. She paused. This is a strong case, very strong. I want the apartment, I said, my voice steady. I want my share of our assets, and I want them both to stay away from me. Maria nodded slowly. We can make that happen. The call started that evening, Lucas first, 7 times in a row. I let each one go to voicemail. Isabella, please, we need to talk. You can't do this. Call me back. You're overreacting. Let's sit down, work this out like adults. You're making a mistake. Think about what you're doing. The tone shifted by the 5th message. You're going to regret this, you hear me? You'll regret it. I saved every voicemail, forwarded them to Maria. Teresa texted, long rambling paragraphs about mistakes and forgiveness and how much she valued family, how sorry she was, how it would never happen again. I blocked her number. Matteo called once. His voice was hollow, exhausted. Mom, I filed for divorce. I can't be married to her after this. I'm sorry, sweetheart, I said softly. Don't be. You didn't do anything wrong. He paused. Dad's been calling me, trying to get me to talk to you. To convince you to drop everything. What did you tell him? That he should have thought about that before he destroyed our family. I closed my eyes. Thank you, Matteo. I love you, Mom. I love you too. The police report was filed on Tuesday. Unauthorized entry. Violation of privacy. Harassment. The officer who took my statement was professional, methodical. She watched the videos, examined the evidence, and nodded grimly. This is textbook psychological abuse, she said. You did the right thing documenting everything. A restraining order was issued within 48 hours. Lucas was served at his office. According to Maria's investigator, he'd stood in the parking lot reading the papers, then crumpled them in his fist. He violated it once, showing up at the apartment building, pounding on the door at midnight, shouting my name. Mrs. Cathy called the police. He was escorted away. Another violation added to the file. The court date arrived on a grey December morning. I wore navy blue. Simple, professional. My hair pulled back. Minimal makeup. Maria had coached me. Calm, composed, let the evidence speak. Lucas sat across the aisle with his lawyer, looking haggard. His suit was wrinkled, his tie crooked. He kept glancing at me, but I stared straight ahead. Teresa wasn't present. She wasn't a defendant in the divorce, only a witness to the conspiracy. But her deposition had been submitted. Damning, detailed. She'd cracked under questioning, admitted everything. The proceedings moved methodically. Maria presented the evidence piece by piece. Videos played on the courtroom screen, Teresa entering, Lucas removing items, the email, the photograph. The financial records showing Lucas had been transferring money to an account I'd never known existed. His lawyer tried to argue stress, miscommunication, marital difficulties. The judge wasn't buying it. Mr. Moretti, she said, her voice crisp and cold, what I see here is not a marriage in distress. I see calculated deception, violation of trust, and coordinated harassment of your wife in her own home. Lucas's lawyer tried to interject. The judge held up her hand. I'm not finished. She turned to the evidence display. The documentation Mrs. Moretti has provided is comprehensive and compelling. This court finds clear evidence of emotional abuse, financial misconduct, and unauthorized invasion of privacy. The ruling came swiftly. Isabella Moretti was awarded full ownership of the marital home. Division of assets, 65% to Isabella, 35% to Lucas. A permanent no-contact order was issued against both Lucas Moretti and Teresa Moretti, née Crawford. Lucas's face crumpled. His lawyer whispered urgently in his ear, but he just shook his head, staring at the table. The judge's gavel struck. Court is adjourned. Outside, the December air was sharp and clean. I stood on the courthouse steps, breathing it in. Maria stood beside me, briefcase in hand. You did well in there, she said. I just told the truth. That's all you needed to do. She smiled. You're free now, Mrs. Moretti. Isabella, I said. Just Isabella? She nodded. Just Isabella. As I walked down the steps, I saw Lucas in the parking lot, leaning against his car. He looked smaller somehow, defeated. Our eyes met for a brief moment. I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no regret. Just emptiness where he used to be. I turned away and kept walking. By the end of the week, I heard through Matteo that Lucas had been let go from his firm. The scandal had spread. Whispers about the court case, the restraining order, the affair with his daughter-in-law. His reputation was destroyed. Teresa had been dismissed from her job too. HR had cited conduct unbecoming after the details became public. Matteo's divorce was moving forward. He'd moved into a small apartment across town, starting over, just like me. That evening, I sat in my kitchen, legally mine now, and looked around. The apartment felt different, lighter, like something heavy had been lifted from the walls. I poured myself a glass of wine and raised it silently to the empty room. "To the truth," I whispered. Then I drank, savoring the quiet. The storm had passed, and I was still standing. The news reached me in pieces. Lucas had been asked to resign. 23 years at his firm, gone in a week after clients requested different representation. I felt nothing, just a distant acknowledgement that actions had consequences. "He's staying with Uncle Paul," Matteo said, sleeping on his couch. Teresa's fall was quieter but no less complete. Let go from her marketing position after HR received an anonymous tip about the restraining order. She'd moved back in with her parents across the state, away from the whispers. Good. Matteo came to visit on a Wednesday evening, looking tired, deep circles under his eyes. "Dad wanted me to ask you to reconsider your harshness," he said bitterly. I told him what you did wasn't harsh, it was self-preservation. He looked up, eyes red-rimmed. I told him I was ashamed to be his son. My chest tightened. "You don't have to decide anything now. I think I already have." I moved through the apartment differently now. There was a stillness to it. Not emptiness, but breath. I started going through old things. The wedding album went to a thrift store. Lucas's abandoned clothes into garbage bags. The decorative items he'd chosen, the books we'd bought together, all donated. I kept only what was mine. One afternoon, I ran into Mrs. Cathy in the lobby. "I heard about the court case," she said softly. "I'm glad you listened when I told you about the Thursdays." "You saved me," I said quietly. "You gave me the truth when no one else would. Women need to look out for each other." She squeezed my arm. "If you ever need anything, a cup of tea, someone to talk to, my door is always open." That evening, I sat at the kitchen table with my journal and wrote, "People keep asking if I've forgiven them. I don't know how to explain that forgiveness isn't the goal. Understanding is. I understand now what I was holding on to. Illusions. The illusion of a faithful husband, a united family, that loyalty was guaranteed. Those illusions are gone. But here's what I didn't lose. My son, who chose integrity over blood. My home, which is finally mine. My clarity, my strength. People think I lost my marriage. But I didn't lose love. I lost illusions. And that's not the same thing at all." I closed the journal and looked around. This wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was the life I'd fought for. And it was enough. Thursday evening arrived quietly. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, steam rising in delicate spirals. The apartment was silent, not the heavy, watchful silence of before, but something softer, peaceful, safe. It was 6:52 p.m., the exact time I used to dread. The time when I'd wonder if someone had been here, if something had been moved, if I was losing my mind. Now there was only stillness, no footsteps in the hallway that didn't belong to me. No faint traces of perfume lingering in the air. No envelopes hidden in drawers. No ghosts. Just me. I thought about Mrs. Cathy's question, the one that had started everything. "Do you know who comes to your house every Thursday?" At the time, it had felt like an ending, like my life was unraveling. Thread by thread, until there was nothing left to hold. But it wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. That single question had given me something I didn't know I'd lost: agency, the power to see clearly, to act decisively, to reclaim what was mine. I'd lost a husband who never deserved me. I'd lost a daughter-in-law who wore kindness like a mask. I'd lost the illusion of a perfect family, but I'd gained myself. I pulled my journal toward me and opened to the last page. The pen felt light in my hand as I wrote the final entry. Thursday, 6:52 p.m. No footsteps, no lies, no perfume, no one here but me. And that's exactly how it should be. One question shattered my old life, but it also gave me the power to build a new one. I am not broken. I am free. I closed the notebook slowly, my hand resting on the cover for a moment. Outside, the city hummed with life. Inside, the apartment was mine, truly, completely mine. I took a sip of tea and looked around. The walls no longer held secrets. The air no longer felt heavy with deception. Everything was exactly as it should be. I stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the light stretching across the skyline. Thursday had once been a day of invasion. Now it was just another evening. And I was just Isabella, whole, awake, alive. The question that had broken me had also saved me. And I would never forget that.